And we're live. How we doing,
What
everybody?
is up, everybody? Jacob hiding in the chat. Let's go,
Let's go,
baby.
dude.
Come
Everybody
on.
already on here. Let's go. Um, I'm gonna do a quick little sound check. But before we get started, why don't you just get a vibe check from everybody? How's everyone's
Yeah,
little day
we're
going? What they're playing? Maybe you're back.
we're super excited for tonight. This is not us playing a game, which is rare for us to stream, but not be playing something. We're doing a unique stream that we're both like super pumped for. We love this topic. I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to ruin it, but we love this topic. We love talking about it. We think it's super interesting. Um, the whole concept of Fantasy Critic. And it also just gives us an opportunity to talk about like how is gaming going in 2024? What are our thoughts on some of these games? We obviously talk about co-op games all the time on the channel, but I would say we play almost as many single player games, if not more than co-op games. We just don't talk about them very often. So I feel like every time we get the chance to, we're both like, it's like, oh yes, finally a chance to talk about this. And we only really do it like twice a year. So yeah, we're both super excited for this.
Cool. All right, I'm back, and it's
All right,
sounding
dude, get us
super
going.
slick. All right, cool. So
Nice.
you're probably showing up, like Andrew said, and they're not playing a game, and they got some weird spreadsheet looking thing on the screen. What's going on here? We are gonna be talking about our Fantasy Critic League. So what is Fantasy Critic? So if you're familiar with fantasy football, it's very much a similar concept, but it's with video games. Okay, so there's this website called fantasycritic.com. I have it actually in the link, and I have our league link down there too, so you can check it out. And basically, it's kind of like this little game that we play. So basically, everyone comes up with like a fake publisher, like a video game publisher. And what video game publishers do is that they publish games and they try to make money off of them, type of thing. So that's kind of like the fantasy of this, right? So basically, what we do is we'll do a draft, and everyone drafts. We did 12 games. We did 6 games. Yes, everyone drafts 6 games, but you have 12 games total on your roster. Okay, so then throughout the year, you have $100 budget to pick up new games. And basically, the way it works is that you want to pick up games that are going to review well. And basically, they review well in a website called OpenCritic. So kind of like Metacritic, but it's OpenCritic because it's just for video games. And games that do above a 70, you'll get points for. You get 1 point for every point that they get above 70, right? And then it starts to become double points for every point that they get above a 90. Okay, and then you'll get negative points if they go below a 70. So you want to draft games that you think are going to review pretty well. We draft them, you draft them all kind of in this sort of snake draft. Will go like person by person, but then throughout the year, you actually bid on them on Saturday nights. There's like a whole timer to it. What's the timer actually? Yeah, so the bids process from 2 days
Like
from
8.
now to 8
Yeah, it's
p.m.
like 8 o'clock on Saturday or something.
8 o'clock on Saturdays. That's right.
You have the whole week to get it in, but then Saturdays, like at 8 o'clock, they're gonna tally
process.
who gets
And you don't know what everyone else is bidding in. So it's like a secret bidding system type of thing. So it's kind of like a nerve-wracking thing because you don't know how much everyone else is gonna bid, and so you kind of have to like kind of suss it out.
or if they're gonna bid at all. There are plenty of weeks where there's no bids.
Yep, exactly. Then there's a kind of a couple other rules, which is that in the draft, we'll go through all their games, and it's a snake draft. So like first person goes through the 6 of us, and then back up the other way. And then we'll do what's called a counter pick. So basically the way a counter pick goes is that you're gonna pick a game on someone else's roster, and if it does badly, you get points. And then if it doesn't come out, then you both get zeros. And then if it does well, then you lose points, right? That's how that works. Yeah.
Yes, and you can only pick each publisher is going to have one locked on them, so you have to only pick one from each publisher.
And then
the point is that then they can't drop it. Yeah, that's super important.
Yeah, because then that's the last mechanic to this game is that you can actually drop games from your roster in your draft, but you can't drop your counter pick game. And so
in theory, you're usually not going to draft a game that's actually going to get negative points and do bad. So really, you're trying to counterpick the game that you doubt is going to come out. That's more likely to happen.
Yes, exactly. But basically, we'll start the year and you'll have 2 super drops, which means you can drop this game at any moment for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be for
as long as it's not counterpick.
Yeah, as long as it's not counterpick. You only have 2 of those. And it can be a game that already came out and you got like negative points for because it didn't do well. You can super drop that. And your other drop is a lot more limited, which is that you can only drop games that haven't come out yet and that have been delayed, type of thing, right? Yeah.
Confirmation that they have been delayed into the next year. So the developer has to come out and say, hey, this game is officially coming out in 2025.
That's right. So you get 3 of those. So you get 2 super drops for anything. You pretty much want to save those for when like a game came out on your roster and it didn't do very well. And then you get 3 of that are like, you know, if you kind of did a curveball and kind of did a pipe dream that, you know, Metroid Prime 4 was going to come out, and then, you know, before the Nintendo Direct comes out and you realize it's actually coming out next year, now you can drop that, but you only have 3 of those. I think those are all the rules, right?
Yeah, you crushed it.
Yeah, first I was going through it and I was like, there's a lot more to this than I remember, but yes. And then, you know, here on the website, you'll actually see points are projected, so you can kind of see like what the system thinks, you know, who's going to win, but it's not like super accurate, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, it means very little.
Yeah, it means very little.
It's done in a weird way, so that it doesn't really help much.
Yeah. And then the last thing is there a prize? So if you're just playing Fantasy Critic, there's no prize in and of itself, like on the website or anything. They do have merch that you can buy, which I suggest you check it out if you end up playing. But we do our own little winner's prize. We have a whole, what did I call it last time? Trophy committee.
Yes.
So we have a
trophy committee of 1.
That trophy committee of 1 is myself. And we have a mug that I designed that the winner gets shipped to their house. Yes. And I'll make up a little logo, which I actually have on our thumbnail for every league year. And then actually,
it's exciting because for us players, it's our reveal of the 3rd year logo.
That's right.
Super exciting.
Yes.
I saw it and I was like, that's the new logo. That's great. That's super cool.
Then the last little bit of it that we kind of have a lot of fun with is that we all come up with names for our fake publishers. And usually you want to do kind of like a fun spin on like an existing publisher. We should really do a prize or like maybe just a hats off to the best name every year.
I do that in fantasy football where we'll vote on who has the best new name every year.
Yeah. Jake, I think, has the best name this year, which is
oh yeah, for sure.
Hoyaverse.
Hoyaverse.
That's that. There you go. I think that one's really good. But yeah, why don't you talk about how long we've been doing this?
Yeah, it is dope, Ty and Pog, indeed, HPR Shredder. So we've been doing this for 3 years now. We started our first year with a group of 5. It was myself. I'm the league manager. Gabe, the head of the trophy committee, and then Jake, who you see on the channel all the time. We probably played the most games with Jake over the years. Christian, who we've played a lot with, and then Garrett, who always shows up for very specific games, but he's always there for them, and that's Warhammer and survival games, and we love it.
Yes, that's true.
And then that year, our winner was Christian, and I got 2nd place.
And that was 2022, right? Yeah.
That was 2022. Yeah, you're going to see a theme there, though. Then on our 2nd year, we added on Andy, someone we've played a few games with as well. So we went up to 6 teams. And again, Christian won, and I got 2nd place. So we are very much hoping that someone steps it up and dethrones Christian. But I personally hope it's not me. I want 2nd place for the 3rd year in a row, because that would be pretty impressive too. But
yeah, I'm flashing the 1st year league and then the 2nd year league.
Yes,
yeah,
nice.
Christian won, which 170, which was,
he crushed us the 1st year. It wasn't even a competition.
Yeah.
And then the next year, he just by the razor's edge beat me. And what was really cool, so a little story on that. The 2nd year, just barely beat me, and I had picked up this game called Metal Slug Tactics. It is now supposed to come out this year. Well, it never got a release date last year, but it was never officially announced for 2025 until like mid-December. So I was able to drop it, but there were no games left to pick up.
Oh, yeah,
and all I needed was like 5 or 6 points. It was crazy.
Yeah, because it ended up being 164 versus like 156, which is really like one game's worth.
Yeah, that's one game's worth. I would need a game that only got 78 on Open Critic. So, I think that's one thing we forgot to mention. The game scores come from Open Critic, not Metacritic. Open Critic aggregates all the review scores for Fantasy Critic. Not specifically for Fantasy Critic, but that's just what they use.
Yeah.
And we heard about this through Kind of Funny. We're both big Kind of Funny fans. We've been watching them, I don't know, for like 3-4 years now. Yeah. And there's a couple of other big channels that do this. Are we one of the biggest channels that do it? I don't know. It's hard to say, but we do love it a lot. I
do have a little bit more followers than I expected.
Yes. Yeah. And if you want to follow our league, sure, why not? That would be really cool. But I loved it because I've played fantasy football my whole life. And so to combine, I love fantasy football, not just because of football, but because of everything else that goes with the fantasy part of it. So to combine that with something that I love a little bit more than football and video games, it's just like the perfect storm. So yeah, Gabe and I are very into it and love doing this. So we're very excited to talk about it. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through, since we didn't get to do a draft stream this year, our schedules just didn't work out, which is a bummer. We're going to be sure that we make sure we do that for next year. But since we didn't get to do that this year, we thought it would be really cool to do a recap. And we're going to start off by just going through each team, talking about what games they drafted and what games they've picked up since then. We'll talk about some of the games. Some of them we've played and we would like to talk about and whatnot. And I think it'll be a good conversation about how's gaming going this year and who's the best fantasy critic player. So let's do it.
I want to say Ty already has some good names out in the chat. Evolver Digital, clever. I like that.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice Dog, Naughty Dog.
Nice.
Illness Studios. What's that one? What's the opposite of illness?
I feel like there is definitely something there with Devolver Digital. Like there's something there.
Evolver Digital. That's a really clever one. I like that. All right, cool. Before I start, please feel free to shout out in the chat like Ty is doing. If you think it's a good pick, if you think it's a bad pick, do you think the game's gonna come out? We want.
Or if you played the games and what your thoughts are on the games.
Yeah, would love to hear it all. So we're gonna go in draft order. So ironically, Christian was the first one to draft. Oh, Remedy Studios. Oh, that's a good one. I like that. So Christian was the first one to draft, which is crazy because he won the past 2 years. And if you go first, I mean, like, that's like
that's a conversation because the last 2 years it was so obvious what the first choice was, and they crushed it. It was Elden Ring 1 year.
That's me.
And
embarrassing.
What was it last year? Elden Ring 1 year. What was the game that would have been?
Wasn't Tears of the Kingdom? Yeah, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah. Both crushed it. So this year was a little bit different, where it was kind of hard to know what was the first overall pick.
Yeah, exactly. So, Christian's first pick was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I think was probably. I'll say this, but then I'll just go through them all and then we'll talk about it all. But that was probably the best choice for a first pick because it did have a date where Jake went second. His first pick didn't really have a date, but I'll get to that. Anyway, so he did Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Mina the Hollower, Splatoon 3 Side Order, Helldivers 2, Pepper Grinder, which is a little indie game. I'll click on these little thumbnails so you can see too. Thank Goodness You're Here, Metal Gear Solid.
And then that would be the draft.
Yeah, and that was the draft, yeah. And then he sort of had... Yeah, that was all 6? Yeah, so he hasn't dropped any games, has he? Yeah, he dropped games from his pickups.
Actually, he's definitely dropped. Yeah, I can tell you. So he has dropped several of his drafted games. He Helldivers he picked up later, Pepper Grinder he picked up later, and Thank Goodness You're Here he picked up later. All the rest of the games that you're about to talk about, I can see right here. It says picked up for $2 on December 16th, Helldivers 2, and so on and so forth.
That's crazy.
One of the unfortunate things is we can't see which games were dropped, but Christian has dropped 3 games.
You might be able to see it in the league history, but anyways, then he picked up, while you look at that, he picked up Metal Gear Solid, Snake Eater, Another Scraps Treasure, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Nintendo World Championships NES Edition, Mario and Luigi Brothership, and then Lego Horizon Adventures. So Christian is sitting, and then his counter pick was Plucky Squire. And Christian is sitting at 62 points with 5 games. let us discuss. What do you think so far? I think first of all, I want to say that I think Christian picking Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was the good move, because I would have done the same thing. I think the other games that were sort of like up there was really obviously Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree. But back in January when we did this draft, because we want to do it at the earliest time of the year, Shadow of the Erdtree did not have a release date, so it's like you don't know whether that was gonna come out or not. So I actually do think that like picking up Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was probably the best shot. Sorry, we gotta.
Yeah, if I was picking, sorry for the background noise. If I would have had the first overall pick, I also would have gone with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, just because at the time it made the most sense. It was coming out right away. Remake did well. This one looked like it was gonna up the game, and it did. I mean, it got a 93, which is fantastic. I mean, if you can get over a 90 with your first pick, like, great job.
Yeah.
So he got 25 points off of that. I'm actually playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I freaking love it. It's a very flawed game, but it somehow, despite lots of flaws, it just like surpasses it in a weird way. On the point of Christian though, I did see, and it would take me forever to go through all of it, but yeah, he did drop 3 of his drafted games. You might forget that his second pick overall was the Peach game, the Princess Peach game.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Actually.
Yeah. So very interesting, but so looking
Christian
at his
dropped
roster,
2 games. Man, I want to know what his other 2 games. So he doesn't have any more super drops.
He dropped 3 games. He dropped 3 of his drafted games. He has no more super drops, and he only has 2 more will not release drops.
Dang. Okay.
He's dropped 3 games, and those are all drafted games that he dropped. Pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So then you got Mina the Howler. Don't really know if that's going to come out this year, so I'm a little bit worried about that. Splatoon 3 Side Order didn't do as well as we kind of thought it did.
Yeah.
Helldivers 2 though, that was a good pickup by him, because that was available and he got it for $2.
Oh,
so
he dropped Earthblade. Here, this is how you can view it actually. If you go to League History and then you scroll down, there's like a big chart, but then you can actually click by name and then it kind of narrows it down.
Perfect. So thank you, dude. Thank you.
No, you're good. Yeah, so he dropped Earthblade. I think he had drafted that. Did he not draft Earthblade? Yeah, he must have drafted Earthblade.
He did draft Earthblade.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Earthblade wasn't gonna come out, I don't think. And so sometimes you just gotta take the L and drop something. And then he super dropped Mario versus Donkey Kong Remake, because I got an 8. That's kind of been the story with Christian this year.
Yeah.
Is that he drafted 2 pretty sizable Nintendo games, it being Mario versus Donkey Kong Remake and then the Princess Peach game, and both of them were like super middling, which were like 8 and like 7, I think. Which again, when you draft a Nintendo game, you're hoping for
you're expecting points. Better than what he got for sure.
Yeah. So that was a bummer.
If you want, going forward, I could read the thing now because I have it up. So maybe I should read them all out so that way we can see what they drafted and whatnot.
Yeah, that's a good point. We could do that. Let's do that.
Cool. Any other thoughts on Christian's roster, dude?
The Plucky Squire counter pick, that is risky. That's probably the riskiest move of this whole draft, of this whole league.
And part of that is because he would have been the last one to do a counter pick.
Yes, so he would have had
because he picked first. So he would have had the worst. He would have been stuck to the roster that everybody else avoided, which I'm pretty sure was Jake's roster at the time.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, what else was he supposed to do? He had to choose between that and Hollow Knight Silk Song, which probably is not going to come out in the end. But if it did, you don't want that. You know?
Neither of these had release dates, so it's kind of like between a rock and a hard place. I was saying, obviously, you don't want to do Hollow Knight Silk Song, but Plucky Squire, if that does come out, that is that's got to be at least minus 15 points, because I think it'd probably get an 85 minimum. Other things I want to say, I do think Christian did some good moves in the last week or last couple weeks, which was he picked up Mario and Luigi Brothership, and he picked up Lego Horizon Adventures. This is around
I could see low 80s for both of those.
Yeah, so I can see I can see lower 80s for both of those as well. Mario and Luigi Brothership, probably a 13. Lego Horizon, probably a safe 80, but maybe a little higher, depends. So I think this, thank goodness,
Assassin's Creed Shadows, I think, is probably going to be in the mid 80s. I think that's a good pickup.
Yeah, I think that was a good pickup for sure, because it seems like this one has a lot more goodwill going towards it. Thank goodness you're here.
It's been a while.
I actually think this could be a pretty sleeper hit. This was actually at the Tribeca Film Festival that I went to, and so I think this actually, and it has a release date now actually, so that's pretty good.
August 1st. Yeah, it's right around the corner.
Yeah,
very excited to see that, because the art style in that game. Look up the art style. If if you're watching for Thank Goodness You're Here. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, that's
it's
really
not what
fun.
you expected.
Metal Gear Solid Delta. Do we think that is this year?
I was gonna say that's not coming out this year.
I do
There's
not.
just no, because we've seen footage of it at Summer Games Fest, but with no date, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't see that coming out. And then you've still got, we haven't mentioned NES Championship. I think that game looks good, but I don't think it's gonna be like a big review game. I could see that getting a lot of 7s and 8s and be in the 70s.
Comes out
I just
on my
don't see
birthday.
it getting 9s.
Yes.
It comes out very soon.
Yep.
So we'll find out. But I just don't see that getting a lot of 9s. I see that getting a lot more 7 and 8s.
Yeah, Mina the Hollower, don't think that comes out this year. I think if it the last shot you had was really on their yacht club direct.
Yeah. All they said is that it's coming out soon, and that's all they would say, which is like, man, you still can't put a 2024 date on that.
Yeah.
So I think it could, but it's more likely it doesn't. So
yeah, exactly. So but yeah, I think that's his draft overall. I think Christian has been dealt some bad hands in that, like, I don't think his pickups have been bad. They just have like underperformed. It reminds me a lot of some of the games I picked up last year, just like Pepper Grinder. You think that's going to be a pretty safe game. It's Devolver Digital, and then it just kind of comes out and it's a 9, or I think it had an 8 at one point too, actually. So it's unfortunate, but actually rather fortunate for the rest of us, because we can't have Christian winning a 3rd year in a row. We just can't have that. So that's Christian.
And yeah, let me go through Jake's draft. So Jake had the 2nd overall pick, and he drafted Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. And then the 2nd round, he grabbed Hollow Knight Silksong. In the 3rd round, he grabbed The Plucky Squire. 4th round, he grabbed Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. 5th round, Pacific Drive. And he ended his draft by grabbing Final Fantasy 15 DLC, The Rising Tide. And his counter pick was actually my last pick, Penny's Big Breakaway. And then he has since picked up Homeworld 3, Europa, Last Epoch, Stellar Blade, and Zenless Zone 0. I don't think he's dropped anything. Dropped any games yet? Yeah, he's not dropped any games yet, and he still has an open slot. And he notably has both of his super drops available and all his will not release games dropped available. So
yeah,
Jake is a dangerous player. We'll get to that later. But what are your thoughts? I guess let's just start at the top. Like, Shadow of the Erdtree, the 2nd overall pick.
That was the right move. I mean, it didn't have a release date, but like that and Hollow Knight Silksong is like, you got to shoot your shot. Again, with the 1st round pick, you just want to go as high as possible without being delusional. Yeah. Which is, there's a narrow window between that.
There is, dude.
And so, yeah, I think Shadow of the Erdtree was the best move, because like it got announced last year. It's been a year since the game came out. You were kind of like, I don't know, you kind of felt like it was probably going to happen.
Yeah, I remember the reasoning at the time, and it made a lot of sense, was Elden Ring will have been out for 2 years.
That's
right.
They're
really going to wait.
Yeah, that's right.
3 years post Elden Ring to put out its DLC. It's like, I mean, as big as Elden Ring was,
yeah,
and I'm sure it still would have worked out, but it's a little bit of like the mind share is lost 3 years later. So it was kind of like, they've got to put it out this year, right? So
this is the narrative. If Christian's narrative was, underperforming games, Jake's narrative is all about redemption to me this season, bro. Where it's like he actually drafted Shadow of the Erdtree last year. And it's been like a buttload of money. I think it was like 70, which is a lot. And then it didn't come out, which we were all like, there's no way that Shadow of the Erdtree comes out the same year that Armored Core 6 comes out. So it was nice. So it's a nice little redemption moment for Jake to get Shadow of the Erdtree, right? And then speaking of redemption moments, Hollow Knight Silksong. Not this redemption hasn't come full circle, but and I don't think it will. I don't think it will either. But there's been this really funny thing between Jake and I with Hollow Knight Silksong, which is the first year in 2022 he drafted it. It didn't come out, obviously. Last year I drafted it. Didn't come out, obviously. Now this year he drafts it, and probably it's not going to come out. So next year I have to draft it again. It's just been the back and forth. It's just been really, really. Well, isn't it just so crazy that each of those years, that now, not the first year, but I'm saying last year and this year, where it's like, well, it didn't come out last year, but there's no way that it doesn't come out this year, and it just blows my mind that we're going to have the same conversation. Yeah. For the 4th year in a row. That is mind blowing to me. That is crazy. Yeah. Well, okay. One thing first. Ty said, I just bought Penny's Big Breakaway a couple days ago. Love that platformers are making a comeback. That's awesome. What do you think of it? Let us know. Do you love it? Is it worth buying? What do you thought? But question for you, bro. Like, if you had to put a percentage on it, like, what is the percentage chance that Hollow Knight Silksong comes out this year?
I put 5% chance.
Yeah, I think so too, because it's like
incredibly unlikely.
Yeah, because you have, Summer Game Fest has already come and gone, so that's over. That would have been a really good time. The Nintendo Direct come and gone. That would have been a really good time. And now, like, really, your last chance is Gamescom, right? Unless it's just like a random, time.
And it could be.
And
I mean,
it could be.
Are
they
an
could
indie
do that.
developer.
Yeah, they're an indie person. They could do whatever they want. But yeah, I think it just would be really weird. I feel like a lot of games that are coming out in the fall have already announced that they're doing that, Like, you kind of announce your game in the summer to say, like, hey guys, it's coming out in the fall or holiday, and that window just kind of feels like it's already like closed or is closing. So it's like, I don't know, be really random. So yeah, I think it's very unlikely. Plucky Squire, I think this is a really good pick by Jake. I really wanted this game myself, actually. It didn't show up at the Devolver Digital Direct, though, so that was really sus for it.
That was surprising. And actually, I did hear that it did. In the pre-show, there was an image that said, good news, the Plucky Squire is coming this year, but then they didn't show it at all. So I would say I think it's more likely it comes out than it doesn't. Yeah. But not by much. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think if it does come out, I think it's going to be great. Like high 80, low 90 kind of game.
Yeah, 100%. Like a Dragon Infinite Wells, this was a great fourth pick.
Round.
Who would have thought that would have done a 90? Not me.
Crushed it.
Because Jake picked up, both Jake and I picked up last year's Like a Dragon games. His did like okay, and it was like his second or third round pick. I'll switch back to last year, actually. Let me take a look.
Yeah, I know there's a Like a Dragon game. Like a Dragon Ishin came out last year, and it was like a 77.
It was an 81.
So I think that was an 81. Okay, so I think that's what scared a lot of us off of Infinite Wealth. That's why it lasted to the fourth round.
And then mine was Like a Dragon Gaiden. Mine did 79. You're kind of expecting that, Like a Dragon games actually do pretty well, so it was a bit surprising on both fronts. But the rest of Jake's picks are a little interesting for sure. I think the Rising Tide one, that feels like it may be underperformed. Pacific Drive also feels like it underperformed. I thought that was going to be really good. I also wanted that pick. Also, another redemption moment I realized too is that Jake also had Plucky Squire last year, so that's a funny
his
one.
first three picks were all redemption moments.
That's crazy, actually. That's true. Homeworld 3, that also feels like it underperformed. Yeah, these three, Pacific Drive, Final Fantasy Rising Tide, and Homeworld 3 all underperform in my opinion. Europa, this is like a sort of indie hit in the making, maybe. Has a really great art style, looks kind of cool, but I don't really know what to make of the game itself, and it doesn't have a firm release date other than summer 2024, so like that's interesting. Not sure if that's coming out. Last Epoch, that's fine. Stellar Blade. Yeah. If you get
above an 80, if you get above an 80, especially in a year like this year, then it's a win.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you get above an 80, that's a win. You're not really dying to drop any of those games. And then he just got Sunless Zone Zero at a 78, which actually...
I'm surprised I got a 78. Yeah. I'm pretty shocked by that. I would have thought it would have been a low 80 because Hoyoverse hasn't had a game below an 80 yet. Yeah. And that's his namesake. He's Hoyaverse.
Wow.
Come on,
that
man.
is crazy.
Hate to see it.
You hate to see it. But he got a -7 from Penny's Breakaway, and so that actually puts Jake at 95 with 1, 2, 3, 4 games waiting, and this actually did tie him up with
all his drops. He's actually technically winning, but in decimal points, he both round to 95.
Yep. And then he does have the most money, actually. Jake has $72.
When we talk about who can win, Jake's looking pretty good.
Yeah, Jake's looking pretty good. I agree. All right, shall we move on to Garrett?
All right, so Garrett's first pick was Tekken 8.
Actually, before we go, we've missed a crucial part of this process, which is we haven't told everyone their publisher names. So Christian is XD Rarcane. as in like rar. I hate that.
You did great. You did great.
Thank you. So obviously a play on Arcane Studios, and then you already did the Hoya-verse way better than I could do it. A play on MiHoYo and Hoyoverse, yeah. And then you can start. What is Garrett's publisher name?
Garrett is Larry and Games.
That's a good one. It sneaks up on you.
Wait, is that Larry and Studios, right?
Yeah, Larry and Studios, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Makers of Baldur's Gate 3, yes.
Yep. All right, so his first overall pick was Tekken 8. Then his second overall pick was Silent Hill 2 Remake. I'm sorry. Don't watch this, Garrett. Then his third overall pick was Black Myth Wukong. His fourth overall pick was Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. His fifth overall pick was Power.
That was his fifth one? I thought that was his sixth one.
It was his fifth overall pick.
Crazy.
And then his sixth overall pick was Stalker 2.
That's a good one.
Part of Chernobyl.
Yes.
This is weird. Oh yeah, then he counterpicked Mina the Hollower to finish his draft.
Yes.
Then he acquired Alone in the Dark, and then later had to drop Alone in the Dark. Then he acquired South Park Snow Day, and then he had to drop South Park Snow Day.
Both of them were pretty bad, right? Both of them did like...
Yeah, both of them were like in the low 70s.
Right.
Then he also got Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. He got Banishers Ghost of New Eden. He got World of Goo 2.
Actually, the game's gonna pop off. Continue.
I do too. Let's talk about that in a minute. He got Kingdom Come Deliverance, and he got Still Wakes the Deep. Notably, Garrett also does have both of his... He has 0 super drops, but he does have all 3 of his will not release drops.
And then he has the second most amount of money, which is 67.
Yeah, so... Yeah, looking at his draft, Tekken 8, great first pick. That crushed it. Got a 90. That was even higher than I would have thought.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But then things get a little bit weird. Silent Hill 2 Remake as his second overall pick. Does it even come out this year? Does it look any good? I'd say
it does have a firm release date.
Oh, it does? Okay. What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it has an October 8th. Yeah. I think this got a release date recently, maybe during SGF or something season. But
does it look good? That's the other question.
It does not look good. I'll give him a pass for Silent Hill 2 Remake because it is a beloved game, but it is it's a risky proposition because again, when you're remaking a beloved game, it's either gonna be like praised to the heavens or torn apart, right? Because it's gonna be stacked up against like an amazing original, and that's kind of what my thought was Resident Evil 4 Remake last year, which I was like, there's no way that's great, and then it ended up being one of the best games of that year. I think it was in like a 90 as well. So the thing with this one though, and I think having it as your second overall pick is tough because you didn't see any gameplay yet, and then now we have seen gameplay and it does not look great. I think universally everyone's like, that looks bad. So it will be really interesting to see where this comes out. I think best case scenario is an 80 or like a 77, right? Maybe if it's just like it's bad, but like if I was him,
I'm hoping for mid 70s.
Yeah, like I'm truly, just does just enough to like retain some stuff from the original, but overall is pretty bad. Then maybe you're like around mid 70s. But again, you don't want that at your second overall pick, so that's tough.
I like Black Myth Wukong. I think it's looking positive. I don't think it's maybe going to be like a game of the year contender, but I think he could get like mid to low 80s on that one. I don't see it like flopping entirely, so I think that was a good third pick at the time.
Here, I'm gonna flash to last year real quick to take a look at Liza P. Liza P did a 12 last year and 82 actually. I thought it was higher,
which is crazy. It deserves way better than that. That is wild.
So I think that's kind of what you're stacking.
Black Myth Wukong can be around there. Yeah.
It's a very Garrett game.
That's just crazy. Liza P is so much better than an 82. Okay, anyway, I think Warhammer, at the time, Space Marine 2, I wouldn't have drafted it because, like, co-op games, you just don't really know. That's why Helldivers 2 didn't get drafted this year. And even though Helldivers 2 is fantastic, it only had an 83 on OpenCritic, but I actually think Space Marines 2 could be something special. The more I see that game, the more I'm like, this is transcending great co-op game to, like, awesome overall game the more I see of it.
Yes, I agree. We usually have this saying, which is that like there's a little bit of this like co-op tax on like multiplayer games. They just like never seem to do as good as you think they will. I do think I agree. Like the more I've seen Space Marine 2, the more I feel like it's bucked the trend. Obviously, this is separate, right? Like we've both have been super hyped for Warhammer Space Marine 2, but we're viewing it in the context of Fantasy Critic, in the context of other people reviewing the game, and that's where I'm like. At first, I was like, I don't know, that's a great pick.
Yeah, as a co-op bro, I've always been hyped for it. But like as a Fantasy Critic player, I didn't draft it for a reason. But now I'm looking at it, I'm like, I think that was a good draft pick, even as a 4th overall pick.
Yeah, well, because I think they just have so much going on in that game that I think like it actually could be really good.
Just because they've covered all their bases, they've pushed it back a couple times.
Yep.
And so I think they're ready to put out something really cool. And I also just think Saber Interactive, like World War Z was so good, but like wasn't quite there yet.
Yep.
And I feel like this is their moment of like, we learned a lot from World War Z. Here it all is for Space Marine 2. So.
Yep.
Then he drafted Power World, which is an early access title. So actually something we didn't mention.
That's right.
Early access titles in our league do not count yet. So they can get review scores during early access. It doesn't matter. If they doesn't get that 1.0, then the points will not count towards the publisher. And Power World is not coming out at 1.0 this year. Even if it did, it's at a 71 right now on Open Critic. So that was a questionable draft pick at the time.
Well, yeah, then that kind of brings up another question that we didn't mention, which is that there's another sort of last little bit of this game, which is that every game has like a tag to it, right? So like Power World is currently in early access and it's a new gaming franchise. Tekken 8 is a new gaming franchise or a new game type of thing. Persona 3 Reload is a remake. So we have certain games that you can and other ones that you can't draft. So we can't draft games that have been unannounced. So like rumors or things like that, like you can't draft those. You can't draft games that release onto early access, right? So like you have to draft them before they come out onto early access. You can't draft remasters. You can't draft partial.
We can draft early access titles because we drafted Baldur's Gate 3 last year.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, but yeah, like to the early access thing, it needs to come out in 1.0 to get points. So I think the only thing I could tell Garrett is that this game we weren't really part of this sort of like, I don't know, I feel like people were weirdly obsessed and hyped for Power World.
It blew up.
It totally blew up.
I mean, if it was based off of popularity, he would have biggest points of the year maybe next to Shadow of the Erdtree, but that's not what it's based off of.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a questionable pick. We'll leave it at that. StarCraft 2 Heart of Chernobyl, I actually think this is going to be the best game that Xbox puts out this year.
In the 6th and final round of the draft, he picked this up. That is awesome.
I really wanted this to be my last pick.
Risky because of a lot of reasons, but good for him.
Yeah, that this didn't have a release date for a while actually, so that was a good.
They got delayed for like 2 years. Because of the war in Ukraine, because the developers are based in Ukraine.
Yeah, I think this game's gonna be awesome. I'm super pumped for it. Granblue Fantasy Relink. This is a good pick. Did an 11. But I mean, there's a lot of positive buzz around this game. So
I loved it. I thought it was great, but I would have given it an 8 out of 10. So
Banishers Ghost of New Eden. Honestly, surprised has got an 80. That just seems so mid.
Yeah, that's shocking to me that I got an 80. So good for him that he got that.
World of Goo 2. I think this game might pop off. Like
I think so too. So the original World of Goo came out so long ago, literally 16 years ago. But on Metacritic, because OpenCritic didn't exist back then, on Metacritic it had a 90.
Holy
a 90
shit.
World of Goo.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I think World of Goo 2 is a great pick from our guy. I love it. I love that pickup from him.
Yeah, that's a good one. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Yeah, can I get a check on what Kingdom Come Deliverance
won? I also think this is a good pickup because even if it didn't do so good the first one, I think this one looks
really
like they've learned a lot from the first one. So. 1 second, it's spelled Kingdom wrong. There it is. It got a 72. But I do think that this one looks like it was like a little bit too ambitious for what it was. I remember it was like uber realistic, medieval sort of game, and I think that this one's more like, hey, we got a really fun and interesting story and interesting characters, and I think that they're building off of that. So I don't think that this is going to be in the 72 range. I like this pickup.
Yeah, I would put it maybe at a 13, like an 83. And if it really
could see it
shines,
there.
maybe an 85. Yeah, that could be pretty
I could
good.
see it in the mid 80s as like
Yeah.
a best case scenario, but like I actually do see it potentially doing
Yeah,
that.
Still Wakes the Deep. I remember hearing a little bit of buzz around this game, sort of like a little indie sort of kind of horror game, I think. Got a 77, so that's a bummer. Around the 77 to 78, that's like where you're really having to decide whether it's worth dropping or not. It's like really tricky. If you get like a 76,
And he can't drop it anymore.
and he can't drop it anymore.
Even if you wanted to.
And then he has an open slot, so we'll see what Garrett does next. Again, he has $67, so that's a good size.
$67 for one spot because all of his games that haven't release date have solid release dates. So he's not using those 3 other drops. So
oh wow,
yeah,
you're
we'll,
right. He's
we'll get back to that.
Yeah, he's kind of bought in.
Yeah, he's bought in.
All right, cool.
Okay,
cool.
next up is my guy here, Kojima Peel Productions.
Nice.
Our boy Gabe.
Hell yeah.
So for his first overall pick, his first round pick was Persona 3 Reload, and then he followed up with another Atlas joint, Metaphor Refantasio.
Hell yeah.
Then he grabbed in the 3rd round Alan Wake 2 Night Springs, the 4th round Unicorn Overlord, the 5th round Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, which he ended up dropping later.
True.
And then in the 6th round he grabbed Skate Story. Then he counterpicked Cat Quest 3, which actually at the time we were like, yes, counterpick Cat Quest 3. Then we previewed it and we're like, oh shoot, that game's actually pretty good.
Yep.
Okay. Then he acquired Avowed. He got Rift of the Necrodancer. You grabbed Animal Well for only $1. What? That's amazing.
That was good.
You grabbed Children of the Sun. And then you grabbed Lorelei and the Laser Eye for only $3. Then you grabbed Crit Master.
Oh yeah, drop that. I forgot
Then
about that.
you grabbed Astrobot. Great freaking grab. And then you dropped Crit Master, and then you picked up Neva. Don't really know. Yeah, let's get into it. Persona 3 Reload. Right now is Gabe's game of the year, my second favorite game of the year. Such a smart first pickup because it was like, is this gonna fail? Heck no. And it did not. 88 is a good first overall pick.
Yeah, that was great. That was and I was like, it had a release date from the get-go, so I knew it was coming out.
It was early. I mean, it was like beginning of February.
Yeah, it was a little funny story to that. It's like I had played the original Persona 3 on PS2, so very, very dear to me actually. But I was kind of afraid. I was like, it was one of those where it's like I needed to draft Persona 3 Reload. It's like it's like if I was gonna have like a bit of a crisis if I went first or second, because I was like, oh no, like I'm gonna have to decide between Persona 3 Reload or, Fantasy or Final Fantasy Reverse or Shadow of the Earth Tree. But it's like another part of this is that sometimes you have like a heart pick. Like you pick up a game that's just like dear to your heart, even though it might be against the logical sense in you, but you just like you do it for the game, So this is
that was Space Marines 2 for Garrett.
Yes, exactly. So this is one of the best results for a heart pick because it did pretty well, obviously.
Yeah. On that subject, Ty said, "Ooh, Metaphor looks so good. Already pre-ordered it. Love to hear that." And Persona 3 Reload was amazing. Ty, you are a fan after our own heart.
Yeah,
we are right there with you. Yeah, Metaphor Refantasio. I love the Atlas back-to-back.
Yep.
What a statement to the 3rd year of Gabe's publishing. I think this was such a good double pickup, and I am pumped for Metaphor Refantasio. So,
yeah, I was. I think we lost Andrew for a second there.
I am all in on Metaphor Refantasio, and I think it's gonna do better than Persona 3. I predict low 90s to mid 90s. I genuinely think this could be the game.
Yeah, I think this was a little risky at the beginning of the year because it didn't have a release date. But
and it's is Atlas going to release 2 games in 1 year, 2 big games in 1 year?
Yeah, it was a little risky, but kind of worked out. I am super pumped for it. Yeah, I'm hoping for the moon. Alan Wake 2 Night Springs actually was at a 13 and it went down last year. Who the hell is still reviewing this game? Oh, enough. It's been a month. Stop reviewing Night Springs.
It's kind of funny because at the time I was like, oh, this is going to be a great pickup.
Yeah.
And then it came out and you were kind of like, I don't think this is that good, but then you still got 12 points out of it, so I was like,
yeah, that was
you gotta take what you can get.
Yeah, that was a really good case scenario because I played it myself and I honestly thought it was pretty mid. I would have given it a 7 out of 10, honestly. And so to get a 12 out of it, I'm happy with that. Unicorn Overlord, which is my third
Great.
Atlas pick. I should have renamed myself Atlas something.
I know.
That's
Why were you not
hilarious.
an Atlas this year? That's just crazy. Yeah,
That is
great,
funny.
great pickup for Unicorn Overlord in the 4th round. Just I knew about Unicorn Overlord, but I hadn't put 2 and 2 together of who was the developer and what their like experience was. But our boy did. And
Yeah, the only
it was a
reason
great
I really
round.
picked this up is because I played 13 Sentinels, which was their last game, and I just thought that game was awesome. And I think 13 Sentinels was reviewed pretty well, actually. So, and then again, this is sort of like, this is actually a little bit of a rule that I've done the past couple of years, I think, is that like, because I drafted Octopath Traveler 2 last year. And those little like retro RTS games, you know, like or turn-based games, I mean, they always do pretty well. You did the same thing last year with that one retro game as well. So so that's always, you can always count on that. Yeah, I did. You were in Chronicles. Actually, that I think no, that's not Atlas. I don't think. No, that wasn't Atlas. That was a bummer. I thought that game could do really well, but it ended up being pretty mid, and so that was an easy drop for me. And then I drafted Skate Story, which is I kind of feel like my I think a lot of my winning potential hinges on whether Skate Story comes out, honestly.
Yeah,
because I think
same with Rift of the Necrodancer.
yeah, because I think Jake.
These 2 in a row are super important.
Yeah, because I think Jake has, again, if Lucky Squire comes out, which I think it will, that's going to be big points for Jake. So if I can get Skate Story, which I played myself actually, and I thought it was absolutely phenomenal, I think I could clutch it. Rift of the Necromancer, man, this is a crazy game. I'm like, where the hell is this game? Like, they said last year that it was going to come out this year. They've been totally MIA. They got a new publisher in Clay, who has done a bunch of really nice indie games, like what's that vampire game? Don't Starve. Yeah. So they're under Clay now, and that feels like it bodes well for the chances. But like, yeah, I don't know where the heck this game is at. I do think it's a good pick. I do think when it comes out, it should be pretty safe because it is part of that like Necrodancer franchise. It is a little different though, so there is a little bit of like it could come out and be maybe too different. So, but the big worry is like, where is this game? What do you think about Avowed? Since we've seen
Avowed,
a little bit.
I know it's gonna come out this year. I'm not like, I don't know. I see it as like a low 80 game, which is not bad.
Yeah.
Especially because you're doing really well. It wouldn't kill you if you got like an 81 out of Avowed.
Totally.
I don't know. It's a game that feels like I could go so many different directions at score. Like, I guess I could see it in the high 80s, but I could also see it like in the mid 70s. You know, it's all over the place for me.
Can we get the score for Outer Wilds, or no, not Outer Wilds, Outer
I'm already
Worlds.
on it.
Outer
Yep,
Worlds,
yep.
Outer Worlds.
No.
Yeah, so
83.
Yeah, so that's probably the best I could hope for Avowed. I think I drafted Avowed because it is an Xbox game. It's one of their tentpole games for this year. So you're kind of hoping, like, I know I'm going to get a date on this game soon. And it was sort of leaked that it's going to come out November 12th. So I do think it comes out this year.
They've gone back on that, but they have come out and said like it is coming out this
Yeah.
year. We just don't have a date yet.
Yeah.
Ty says the EA Skate reboot might drop before Skate Story. That would be wild.
That would be wild.
But it's
yeah, they
possible.
said, bro, it's been so quiet with Skate Story. It looks so unique. Yeah, it's awesome. I got the chance to demo the game at this little like New York exhibition, and it was awesome. I genuinely have thought about it a lot since I played it. It was so much fun. I just thought it's awesome. So I think it's a safe pick. But yeah, I think Avowed is gonna be, it's probably a 12, 13, maybe 10, because it's like a smaller scope kind of game. But like I think hopefully they can like kill it because it is a good developer in Obsidian, obviously. Animal Well, I think that was my best move. That was my pro gamer move this year.
That was huge. $1 pickup for Animal Well. I don't know what the rest of us were doing. Such a good pickup.
Yeah, we'll talk about how I spend my money because I think that's been my biggest weakness, because I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed that I thought was really funny. So 89 on Animal Well, best you could hope for a $1 indie game. Like, that's awesome.
And we both played it and we both loved it.
Yes,
I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, incredible.
So
game.
good. I don't know how you can like not enjoy it.
Yeah.
But there is like a level to like how much can you enjoy it?
Yes.
Because you could enjoy it like it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, or you could be like me and be like, this is great, but like I can't quite get there where other people are able to get there. So the fact that you got an 89 out of it, I think is awesome.
Yeah, this is a very high up on my list of the year. I just think it's amazing. It probably would be my game of the year if had Persona 3 not come out. Children of the Sun, I was hoping more from this one, but I'll take the 11, honestly. I played it myself, and I think 11 is probably around where it should be. But it was
knowing what that game is, I think 11's like a win for that.
Yes, for sure. But it was like leading up to it, people were talking really positively about it, and they were like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" I was kind of hoping to catch lightning in a bottle twice with Children of the Sun, because it actually came out. Yeah, they came out right around the same time, a month before Animal Well. So I was hoping I could get big points from that. Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, really happy with where that came out. That was also a bit of a stab in the dark, but very much a Gabe game, actually. So, but that's bit me in the butt a lot of times, actually. So I was a little scared drafted this, but I was just kind of like, I'm doing okay. Let's see what we can do. So an 87 from that, I think is really good. And then yeah, this is crazy. I did get away with drafting Astrobot.
Yeah, he picked it up for $30, but nobody else bid on it. Yeah. Not even me, because I'm a freaking dummy. I don't know why, because I think Astrobot is probably the highest scored game still coming out this year, outside of blanking on me right now. Metaphor ReFantasio. Yeah, and Gabe has both of those. So
yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, this was wild. I was surprised that some of the other guys didn't draft this. I think it made sense for you in a way, because you had
we'll get to why I didn't, but I didn't even think about it, which is shocking to me. I'm glad that I had a reason in the end why I didn't, and I wouldn't have beat you for it. But it does blow my mind that I didn't even think about it. Yeah. And it blows my mind that nobody else put any money towards it.
Yeah, I did a lot of mental calculus with this one. And also this was announced at the PlayStation Showcase, which is the first showcase of the whole overall like Summer Game Fest / showcase season. So it's a little risky, right? Because you're sort of like thinking like, well, this looks pretty good. Should I just pick it up now, or should I wait for Summer Game Fest or Xbox or Nintendo to pick up some other stuff? But for me, I was like, I already had the least amount of money. And so like, I knew that like the other guys were kind of sandbagging and were going to be able to trounce me in terms of like the big game coming out. So that's where I was like, I did some mental calculus and I was able to kind of do this for 30, but then was actually shocked that I could have picked this up for $1, which is wild. And then I spent buku money on Neva. Again, no one picked this up, which is wild to me.
I think it's a good pickup, but it doesn't have a date, and that worries me.
Yeah, I think in the mid half of the year, it is a little tricky. I do think it's going to come out because Devolver has reiterated a couple times that it's coming out. I think this is more of a positioning, sort of like when can this come out. But I also got to demo this at Tribeca, and I thought it was really fun. And I had played their game Grease a couple years back, and that did like an 86, I think. And so this bodes well, like could do pretty well. But again, the big risk is more like it doesn't come out. But I've already used my super drops. But I do have all three of my, will not release drops. So I could potentially drop that or Rift of the Necrodancer. I am stuck with Skate Story though, which is a bummer. So the funniest thing about my draft, I think, is that I'm at $10 and every single one of the games I've picked up have been uncontested, which is hilarious, which means
that is crazy.
I could be sitting on like 95.
I mean, yeah, in theory, if you just put $1 on each of those, you'd have like $90.
Yeah, I could be sitting on $90, and that's wild to me.
You could have got the Zelda game.
Yeah, but here's the thing about me: I'm like a little nervous when it comes to bidding on stuff. My general rule to myself is usually like, just bid what you gotta bid to get the game if you feel like it, and so that's what I
always say. If you're gonna be upset if you don't get it, then that means you need to bid on. Bid to win.
Because the first year I got outbid a lot on stuff, and a little bit the second year maybe too. But this year I've been like, just Mr. Moneybags, just like whatever it takes. I'm throwing the money out there. So it's hilarious that I have the least amount of money when all of my games have been uncontested, but that's just how it goes, All right, let's move on to Andy.
All right, so Andy's first overall pick was Dragon's Dogma 2. His second round pick was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. His third round pick was Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail. His 4th overall pick was Star Wars Outlaws. His 5th round pick was Frostpunk 2. And then his 6th round pick, which at the time surprised us, but now we kind of were like, wow, that was not that bad of a pick, was Cat Quest 3.
Yep.
And then he counterpicked Gabe's Skate Story. He acquired Path of Exile 2. Looks like
but he
dropped that one later because of early access, and he realized, yes, so that doesn't really matter. He also grabbed The Rise of the Golden Idol. Oof, he grabbed Deep Rock Galactic Survivor. He grabbed Visions of Mana, and he grabbed Dragon Age the Veilguard. He has both his super drops and all 3 of his not release drops.
Yes.
So he doesn't have a lot of release dates yet, but not everything, but most of what he has a release date. His other problem is that Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is also supposed to be early access. So I see that probably being dropped at some point. So, and he's got a weird team. He's a real dark horse pick, but he's still in it.
Yes.
Because he still has so much more potential. He just needs to act on it.
Yeah.
But yes, just starting off the top, Dragon's Dogma 2, I remember at the time I was like, man, 1st overall pick, and it got an 87. And I think both you and I would agree because we played through that game. 87 is way too high for that experience.
Yes.
I did not like Dragon's Dogma 2. I just did not.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because it's like there are so many good parts of that game, but like the bad just completely outweighs it for both of us. We both ended up giving it 7s, but the first 10 hours of that game are definitely.
I gave it 6. I gave it 6.
The first like 5 to 10 hours of that game are 87 worthy to me. Like I thought it was
for sure.
So
First
much
15,
fun.
The first 15 hours, I was like, is this one of my favorite games I've ever played? And then it just went downhill.
Yeah.
So freaking hard from there.
Yeah.
It was mind blowing.
It is one of those games that like the more I think about it, the less I like.
Mm-hmm.
Because you start to see the seams and you're just like,
the more time you spent on it, I think the worse it got.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So that's interesting.
Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I love that pick at the time.
Yes.
I played Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Absolutely loved it. Definitely up there for me. Probably going to be top 5 of the year. So I think an 87 is worthy. And I think
this was one of the best picks you could pick up because it
was coming out right away.
Yeah.
You love to have those early release dates.
Yep.
Get some points on the board.
Dawn
Trail, good pick.
Yeah, just got points on the board recently, July 2nd.
Although I think it actually has not updated yet. Isn't it down to 14 points?
Yeah, I think it is down to a couple more points. Yeah. But you're probably.
He still got 8. He's gonna be above an 80, so that's a win.
Yep. Outlaws comes out on the 30th. This is his next game to come out.
I think that'll be. I would think that's got to be above an 80. I don't really think its ceiling is too high because just like. When was the last time Ubisoft had like a game of the year, like high 80, low 90, outside of actually Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, ironically. But like their open world games, it's been a long time since one of those has like really wowed anybody.
Yeah.
Could Star Wars Outlaws be the one, or Assassin's Creed Shadow be the one? Those feel like their best bets, but there's a lot of it's hard to say for that.
Yep. Frostpunk 2. This is a weird one because it was set to come out like pretty soon. Actually, I think it was about to. I think it was next month.
I think it was this month. I think it was this month. I think it was like next week.
Yeah.
Did we review? Yes, Chrono Christian. We have reviewed you. You were the first one, so you're gonna have to find a way to rewatch this, buddy.
That's right.
Actually, well, we haven't talked about who will win yet, and I'm sure you're gonna be just the theme of that conversation.
Yes. So that was weird that Frostpunk 2 got
it's a little sketchy.
It's a little sketchy. It got delayed. It's so close to its release date. That's you don't want that. You don't want to hear that. And then Cat Quest 3, which we played, and I mean I thought that was pretty good. I'm hoping for a 75, but realistically, because I counterpicked it.
I actually do think it's gonna be in the low 80s, so that's a bummer.
Yeah, I think it's probably gonna be. If I put it somewhere, I put it as an 82. I put it as a 12.
Which is a good last pick, and unfortunate for you.
Yeah, it's
but
unfortunate counter pick. Yes.
You didn't have good choices. You were the one of the last ones to pick a counter pick.
Yes,
and at the time, it was like Cat Quest 3. I can't believe you even drafted that, but yep, worked out.
That's right.
Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, I already mentioned, is going to be early access, so he's going to have to drop that somehow.
Well, yeah, it's currently out, so he's hoping for it to come out on 1.0 this year.
Which I highly doubt.
Yes,
that
I do
in the
highly
same
doubt.
year it'll come out. It's very rare for a game to come out in early access and then come out in 1.0
Yes.
in the same year. Rise of the Golden Idol doesn't have a firm release date, but was a really sneaky little bid that he put in.
Just
where
on a
Gabe and I
random
both
day.
had this on our radar, but we were both kind of waiting like a trailer, a release date, even like another reminder of 2024. But he just snuck in there and grabbed it before any of that.
Both, I think we were both thinking the same thing, that we were both thinking nobody else has this on their radar. This is like my back pocket pick. Like, I'm gonna pull this out of nowhere. It's gonna get a 90. It's gonna be great. Like, look up, what did Golden Idol do?
I want to say it was.
I think it's an 88.
Well, wasn't a Golden Idol. What was it actually? Because that's that game right there.
What do you mean? No, it's the Curse of the Golden Idol.
There we go. Curse. I needed the first part. The Case of the Golden Idol. That's right. 87.
87. I was close. I said 88. So yeah, so I think that was so sneaky when Andy just drafted this on like a random Saturday. I was like, what the fuck? I was so mad. And then Dragon Age: The Veilguard. This was interesting.
I think that was the best. Yes, I did bid on it. I felt like out of the Summer Game Fest weekend. So just again, gave the context. PlayStation gave their showcase, and he bid on Astrobot. That was one week, and the next weekend was when Summer Games Fest happened. And I felt like the best game that was announced there that was going to come out this year was Dragon Age: The Veilguard.
Can you go through what did everyone bid on it? Because this is one of the larger bid wars that we had, actually.
Yes, it was one of. There's 3 people who bid on Dragon Age: The Veilguard, which I think again made sense. It was the best option from that. But let me see. He picked it up for only $16. I can't find.
I think you all. Yeah, I think it was around this. I think he beat you by 1, maybe. I think you bid 15, and then someone else bid like 12 or something.
Yeah, Jake also bid on it. I can't find the pricing, but yeah, 3 people bid on it, and he won. I don't think. I'm not super upset that I lost it, especially because we'll get to why I didn't bid that much on it. But I do think, that's a big game. Following up, the last Dragon Age was a huge success. Yep. Game of the Year winner that year.
But it's been a while.
There's been a lot that's happened to BioWare since then. So
it's been
just a lot of question marks.
It does. I would say
they showed gameplay though, and it looked good.
I think it looked good.
It looked good enough to where 3 people bid on it.
Yeah, I think it looked good. I'm actually excited for it. I don't know if I'm like personally excited to play it, but I think it's gonna do good. I'll say that. I think I would put it at an 85, like a 15. That's what I would say.
It's so hard to say. Visions of Mana. Then I think that's a nice little pickup. It's one of those games where I always was teetering. Like, do I put money towards that? I feel like there's gonna be better options.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not a bad option just to like have some guaranteed points.
I think I'm curious about this question. I'm not convinced this is safe points, to be honest. I think this.
You think it's gonna be below a 70?
Not a below a 70, but I don't know if you.
I guess when I say save points, I could see it getting like a 78 or a 79.
That's fair. Yeah, I could see it getting like a 77. Yeah, like I could see it around there because the sort of like whatever of Mana franchise has kind of had a lot of ups and downs. And I think there's a little bit more riding on this one. So I don't know. I could see it crumbling under the pressure, so to say. So we'll see.
All right. Let's get to your boy.
And then Andy also has $60, just to say. So you got $60 left.
Yeah. He has a lot of potential. He just got to act on it, like I said.
Yep.
Oh, and his name was Active Gizzard.
Active Gizzard. That's a good one.
Active Gizzard, my bad.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And then Nintendo, that's me. First overall pick was Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door remake. And then my second round pick was Rise of the Ronin. That sucks. Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 was my 3rd round pick. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 was my 4th round pick. Tales of Kenzara Zao was my 5th round pick. That sucked. Penny's Big Breakaway was my 6th round pick. I counterpicked Pal World, which was a great counterpick because it's not going to do anything to me.
Yep.
Then I grabbed BlazBlue Entropy Effect.
Pro gamer move.
More on that in a bit. Pro gamer move. Then I grabbed Diablo's DLC, The Vessel of Hatred. I grabbed Metro Awakening VR. I grabbed V Rising. I grabbed SteamWorld Heist 2. I did get outbid on Dragon Age the Veilguard. I put $12 and he put $16. I super dropped Rise of Ronin, then I had to reclaim it. That's a whole story. Then I super dropped Tales of Kenzara Zao. I acquired The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom for $71.
Huge bid.
And then I also acquired Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake for $17. So I still have one more super drop, and all of my will not release drops.
And you have $4.
I don't have a lot of money left.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm full and I've done everything I can. I feel like my year has been disappointing draft picks because 3 of my draft picks ended up in the 70s. I really did not see Rise of the Ronin being a 77. That
one hurt.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, that one hurt. Even if I thought like worst case scenario, you would think that it was going to be at least an 80, right? An 82, because it did look so good. We were so pumped for that game, and then it was just like, oof.
And we even played it.
Yeah.
I played it for a few hours. I tried to get into it. I just think it's an incredibly mediocre game.
Yeah,
I'm honestly glad I got a 77 out of it.
Yeah. I think the biggest shock for me on your draft list is Senua's Saga Hellblade 2.
Yeah, I know.
That was crazy.
I feel like my draft has been so disappointing.
Yeah.
I've done a really good job with my pickups throughout the year, but my draft has just been such a bummer because it's like, yes, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Sure, I got an 81 out of it, so above 80, that's good, but I was not expecting to get in the low 80s for that.
Dude,
I
thought this was going to be like Naughty Dog level game, like 90, like big Xbox game coming through. And then it was just like, and then it was really a typical Xbox game. Because it just disappointed you. Oh man.
Yeah.
That was a huge bummer.
Penny's Big Breakaway. I was bummed by that. It's the first game from the Sonic Mania studio. Sonic Mania was fantastic, so I thought this was also going to be a big moment for them. I heard a lot of critics weren't wild on it, but if you played it and got into it, it was fantastic. But unfortunately, that does not count. So I only got 7 points there, and I got it locked in, so I cannot drop it.
Yeah, who counterpicked
Nor will
this?
I probably drop it.
It was Jake. Yeah,
Jake.
that was an interesting move because it's like, I felt like I didn't know about that game going into the draft, and so it was a little bit of a mystery, and then it kind of ended up working out for Jake. But yeah, mostly.
I feel really good about the Diablo 4 DLC. I was a little surprised nobody else was going for that. I know a couple of people were considering it, but nobody actually bid on it. But I mean, Diablo 4 base game got an 89. I know that fans have been very on and off on the seasons. Some seasons they've hated it, some seasons they've loved it. But the reviewers loved Diablo 4.
That's true.
And this was the first big DLC. I don't really picture it kind of like how Final Fantasy 15 also got an 89 last year, but both of its DLCs didn't do well. But I don't feel like those DLCs were like, hey, here's a little bit of extra content. This is Diablo 4's first big hey, everybody come back to our game.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be an all-out situation. So I do feel really good about picking that up.
I agree. I do actually think this is a good move. It was, and you drafted this somewhat early. I think
pretty early.
Yeah, so I think that was the only thing, but it worked out in your favor because it didn't have a release date. I think that's I was also
it was
thinking
just
about it.
2024.
But you kind of expected it to be safe, but
yeah, I would be shocked if they didn't get a big DLC out in the first year.
Yep. So that kind of worked out though. That worked out for you because it did get a release date, and then that cinematic trailer did look dope. So
then BlazBlue Entropy Effect. This was wild. I saw a trailer for this on SkillUp's Weekly, and I was like, that game looks so good. How have I never heard of it? So I did my research. It's like an anime that I never heard of, and it's had some other games and whatnot. And it had demos that were really well received. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be crazy and I'm gonna bid on this. And it worked out. I got 14 points out of this game that no one had ever heard of.
Nope.
No one has talked about since it was released, but I got my 14 points and I moved on with life.
So this is an interesting strategy that you wouldn't know unless you play Fantasy Critic for a year or two at least, which is that sometimes you want to try to find a game that like is maybe flying under the radar a little bit and it's only gonna get a couple reviews, because the thing, so there's actually a little bit of there's more complexity to the way it works for OpenCritic, which is that they have all these critics that submit their reviews and all that, people like IGN and all this stuff, but only certain critics contribute to the actual score of the game. So you have to be listed as a top critic for it to count. And so, not just every critic counts. And there's some in there that you might think like we're a top critic, but maybe are not actually. Like I think that one little bit channel called Noisy Pixel, which I think they're like, solid little indie outlet. They're actually not a top critic. They review a lot of indie games though. And so sometimes you want to find a game that flies under the radar a little bit and it's maybe only going to get a couple reviews, but the few reviews that it gets are going to be really good. So then it has a smaller curve. And that's exactly what happened with BlazBlue, which is a huge risk because you could do it where it's like, it might not get enough reviews risky. Because that's the other thing. It has to get 3 reviews for 3 top critic reviews for it to even count. And I think this only has like less than 10 reviews. So it worked out really well in your favor actually, which is pretty dope. You'd love to see it.
Yeah, then I grabbed V Rising, which I think was just like, I knew it wasn't going to blow up. At this point, we already knew what its score was going to be for the most part because it had reviews from the early access period. We also played it and we loved it.
Yes.
But so I was okay with just like, let me get 14 points, nice and easy. I didn't really have to compete for that, and I feel good about that.
That was pretty good. I thought that was a great
My
pick.
only thing that I don't know what I was thinking was Metro Awakening VR. I do know what I was thinking. The trailer for this looked really good.
It did look really
VR
cool.
is a weird one where like, similar to what we were just talking about, VR games have like a little bit of a leniency where there's just not a lot of good VR games. So like when one shows up, and even if it's not like the greatest thing on the planet, if it's just good enough, it'll get good reviews. Similar to last year. What was that VR game that released at the very end?
Asgard's Wrath. I think that like 92.
Asgard's Wrath had like a 93 on OpenCritic. Metro Awakening VR in that one trailer looked way better than that. But I honestly think the problem is less so how it will score and the fact that I really doubt it's coming out this year. We haven't heard a bit about it since it's
about it by now for sure. I think we would have really heard about it on PlayStation.
Trailer.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that that's going to be a game that I end up super dropping, and or if I get some news, I'll probably end up using a drop on it.
Yep.
And I'm kind of okay with that. And then SteamWorld Heist 2, the first SteamWorld Heist got an 86 on OpenCritic. I really liked that I was able to get that one.
Yeah, that was good. I was waiting for this.
It's got a firm release date coming out next month, so that's feeling good. We already talked about Rise of the Ronin. Screw Rise of the Ronin. So disappointed in that. And then so the whole thing with Summer Games Fest is I had the most money going into Summer Games Fest season.
You had like 90.
So when Astrobot, I had a ton of money. So when Astrobot got announced, it was kind of like, well, I got to wait and see about Summer Games Fest. I got to wait and see what Nintendo does. So I'm not going to bid on it, And then Summer Games Fest happened. Same thing with Dragon Age Veilguard. I was like, that looks good. But is it like a league winner? I got to wait and see if Nintendo does anything.
And that's what's tough, right? Because Nintendo historically goes towards the end of June, so like a week or 2, like 2 weeks actually, after Summer Game Fest and all the other showcases. So you really gotta like, it's an exercise in patience, It
is. It's an exercise in patience. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Last year, the reason I got so close to beating Christian is they didn't even announce Super Mario Bros. Wonder until June, which is kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, that was wild. Year before that, it screwed me because I think I got out of that Nintendo June Direct like Mario freaking
Oh, yeah. I think we might have lost you again.
Make those HD 2D remakes always do well.
Back. You broke up for a second. Last year you picked up.
Yeah, last year I got Mario Soccer, or 2 years ago, last year I got Super Mario Bros. Wonder in that June showcase, and that almost won me the league. 2 years ago I got Super Mario Soccer. That was probably the reason I lost the league.
True.
And then this year it worked out to wait, because I got both Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake, and the HD 2D Remake games always do well. And then I also got The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which I think is like a guarantee at least 86, 87, but like potentially even more than that. And I sold out for that. I just barely beat Jake by $1 to get that game, that was like big boy math.
Yeah, that was huge. Yeah, you did some big calculus to get both of those games. That was pretty wild, actually. So yeah, you beat Jake by 1 point on this. Jake has, that's a tally. Jake has 72, and you bid. Didn't you? I think you bid 72, and he bid 71. No, I think. What did you bid? Can you go back and see what you bid? It's probably one of the.
I bid 71. He bid 70.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's wild. That was a pretty wild one.
All right, so that is the whole league so far, and looking into the future. We're getting towards the end of the stream, but we wouldn't want to end it without making some predictions.
That's right. Well, let's consult the robot that is not very accurate.
I don't like this robot because it doesn't look good for me according to the robot.
So there are projected points, and it projects your boy, myself, as the winner with 143 points. But usually, actually, this is like kind of like a key way to discern that it's probably not super accurate, because most of the time the winner gets up to 150.
I've always said, and I've been right every year, if you can get past 150, you probably won or you're in contention, and that's been the case every year. If you can get past 150, you probably already won. So that's the goal, and I think we'll get to that, but keep going.
But yeah, I think the projected people are not super far away. I do think I have a pretty big shot. I think Jake has a pretty big shot, and then I would say me, Jake, and Andrew are the most likely. And then I think Andy is kind of like a dark horse, like could come out of nowhere, but I'm not sure. I mean, let's see. Andy is at 50 points, still has a bunch of games to come out. But there's also like, he has to pick up 2 games, and there's not much in the year. Not very few games start to get announced around November.
He'd have to find some indies that,
you're gonna have to dig in the barrel.
Haven't been picked up yet.
Yep, exactly. Jake,
still very possible though.
Yeah, still very possible. Jake is very interesting. I think honestly it does very much hinge on whether Plucky Squire comes out, which I think is likely. So I mean, that would give him a big chunk of points. I don't think Hillsong comes out or Silksong comes out. Europa game, that's an iffy one, not sure. And then he only has one more slot. The thing about Jake is that a lot of his games, they're not like within that like dropping ratio. Even a 77 is kind of like, that's fine, that's not gonna lose you the league. And so, but obviously if you want to win, you want to get those big points. Hatcher's in the chat. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, Hatcher? I think the big thing to me with Jake is that he still has 2 super drops. That's where he's dangerous, because he's already got a lot of points, but he's also dangerous because he's got 2 super drops, so he can drop Hollow Knight Silksong even if it never gets that release date.
That's smart.
And he can drop one of his 77s, and then he's got 3 spots that he could fill, which again, it's a little hard to fill spots at this point, but there are indies that do come out in the fall and winter time that will review really well, that are readily available. So Jake is definitely still a contender, plus he's got Plucky Squire. So he's a dangerous opponent for sure. For sure.
I think I have a pretty big shot. I have 6 games to come out. I'm waiting on 6 games. I have half of my rosters here, and I'm waiting on the other half. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Metaphor and Astrobot are the biggest things I got going for me. I think those are easy points. I would be shocked if those don't do well. Skate Story is really 50-50. I do kind of lean on it not coming out, but like...
I lean on it not coming out.
But Yeah, that's kind of more like a surprise. So that's a bummer. And then the Cat Quest 3 counter pick. So that's like minus, 10, 12 points. So that's a bummer.
Yeah, I think that
I think Neva
the
is really
reason
what...
you're
Sorry, go ahead.
I think the reason that you're predicted to win is because you have 2 games on there that could easily be 90 and above still.
Yeah.
And you haven't had anything below an 80 yet. I think your weakness is you don't have any more super drops.
Yep.
You have a couple games without release dates. And you have a Cat Quest 3 that could give you some bad negative. But, I mean, I haven't done my predictions yet, but I do... my best guess is that you win.
I think
it's definitely not a sure win yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's a sure winner, to be honest, right now.
No, there's
which is
definitely not.
exciting.
We're halfway through, and I think it's very open.
Yep.
Considering where we're at.
I think a lot of it now, thinking about it, I think honestly a lot of it's going to hinge on whether Neva comes out for me. So hopefully it does, because I do think that's going to do pretty well, and I think that can offset, my counter pick and
you need to get some sort of news on it.
Yep.
Or get some sort of news on Rift of the Necrodancer, so you
Yes.
don't just have a big 0 sitting there.
Yes, yeah, that's another big point for sure. So we shall see.
You want me to go through my predictions on who I think will win and whatnot?
Well, let me do my little analysis on you real quick, and then yes. I think you got 3 honestly pretty big games coming out that are like surefire hits type of thing. Potentially 4, but Microsoft Flight Simulator, I mean, come on, that's gonna get buku points. We all know it. Dragon Quest HD2 remake. Honestly, like when you were saying the whole like HD 2D remake stuff, like I think you're right. I think that's gonna do pretty well. And then obviously Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, buku points, like that's gonna do great. So I think those 3 are like surefire. I think Diablo, I think that's gonna be pretty good. Like I could see it maybe doing like a 15, which would be great type of thing. But maybe it really turns it around and it gets closer to what the original one did as well. And you had a pretty good luck with DLCs last year, so you got to trust this man's judgment. And then SteelWorld Heist 2, like I think that one's an interesting one because it's been so long though since SteamWorld Heist 1 came out. So it's like, has this adapted? Has it like evolved? But like, I think that's a safe pick regardless, like a 13 minimum in my opinion. So so you got some good things going for you, bro.
I think my strength is that everything I still have releasing outside of Metro Awakening is coming out, and I would be shocked if anything was below an 83 out of all those games.
Yeah.
So I think I have guaranteed 80 pluses out of all of the rest of my games.
Yep.
And then I think, with the super drop, I'm still going to be able to pick something else up and potentially even have 1 super drop and all my non-release drops. So I can at least super drop Metro Awakening VR if I never hear anything around like November.
That's smart.
Or hopefully at some point something comes out about it.
Yeah.
And then I can, so I do think that I have a good shot there. Yeah, my overall predictions. Super similar to Gabe. My prediction is that Gabe probably wins, but it's very close between you and Jake, I would say, as who I think would win right now.
Yeah.
Guessing, I would go you and then Jake. And then honestly, I feel like between Andy, Garrett, and I, we all have the same potential, but it always comes back to, will Andy and Garrett put in that extra effort to get there? Because I think they have the potential to do it.
Yeah.
They're just not going to be as active, and
It's
I know
true,
I'm going to
honestly,
be very active.
Garrett has some interesting games coming out that like.
Yeah, I genuinely think, but all Garrett, Andy, and I don't have as good a chance as you or Jake, but I do think we have a shot.
Yeah.
And then that leads us to Christian at the bottom, where I'm sorry, my guy, if you're watching this, but I think he might be out of it.
Yeah. Did he lose the juice? I don't know.
I think he was so confident after winning 2 in a row that he was like, I don't need to win this 3rd one. I'm just gonna go crazy, and he did. I mean, his draft was wild. He ended up dropping 3 of his draft games. That's crazy. That was wild. And one of them was still Mina the Hollower. It's still like, that's crazy. What a draft. So he went all awesome. Out.
Yeah, I do think this year is going to be the closest year in terms of like all our points might be a little closer than they have been in the past, which that's awesome. I think we really have like, the first year we didn't do, I think the first year we only did 1 super drop and like 2 will not release drops. Then last year we kind of did 2 super drops and 3 will not releases, and I think that's the perfect number. And I think this year we've all really kind of, I think last year was a big learning one. Obviously the first year was very much like no one knows what they're doing.
Yes.
And I think last year we kind of learned a little bit more, and then I think this year's really been like everyone gets it. We got the system down. You know, everyone has a shot.
Yeah, the first year Christian was so far ahead; it wasn't even close.
Broken.
And then last year there was a pretty big gap between Christian and and then I think you got third place, so there was a pretty big gap there still. But this year, yeah, I could see there being a gap between you and Jake and the rest of us. But yeah, it's like I said, I genuinely think the best 2 teams right now are you and Jake, and then Andy, Garrett, and I are like pretty neck and neck at third.
Yeah.
And could make a run for it. And then you got Christian in 6th. And you know what? You still got to respect the GOAT. He's won twice in a row to start the whole thing off.
And he gave us a show with that draft.
That's right. He was playing with house money.
Yep.
So, you know, nothing but respect there.
Yeah, nothing but respect there for sure. Cool, but I think that's all we got for this stream, right, dude?
Yeah, I feel good about it all. I love the conversation that we got to have about Fantasy Critic, about 2024 so far. It's been a weird year for sure.
Yeah.
From both this, just video games in general, also in co-op. Like, there's been some good stuff, but it's definitely not 2023, and I don't think it's gonna. I think it's gonna pale in comparison to 2025. It very much feels like a sandwich year between 2 like genuine
landmark
behemoth years. Yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, so thank you so much for everybody that joined us during the stream. Everybody who's gonna watch afterwards. We know this is one of those streams that like is gonna have a lot of legs afterwards because it's just like an interesting topic to go back and watch. I do always find myself rewatching these kind of conversations.
Yeah, they're fun.
Because I just think that they're fun to listen to. So yeah, we're very grateful for everybody who came in and joined us. You know, Ty throughout this was commenting, so we appreciate that, and found out he's a big Atlas fan, and we love to hear it. But yeah, so thank you guys, and again, we're gonna do at the end of this year, we'll recap this 2024 league, but we'll mostly be focusing on the year to come. In 2025, we'll do our draft all in one big show,
which is awesome,
and we're very much looking forward to it. It is going to be super fun.
So much fun.
Yeah. The whole gang is there, all 6 of us.
Yep.
You know, it's Fantasy Critic, but it's also like a full preview on the next year. And I like I said, 2025 is going to be a behemoth. And if you want to follow along, check out the link below. You can follow our league. You can just like go on there at any time. It's like a public sort of thing, so you can just go and watch, see what we do, see how we're doing, see if there's any pickups, who's in first, who's making a run for it at the very end.
Yep.
And you know, last I want to give a shout out to Fantasy Critic. If you liked what we talked about, if you thought this was interesting, go make your own league and support the creator of Fantasy Critic.
Because it's one person.
Yeah, it's one person who's put a ton of work into this. We're massively appreciative, and we hope that this is something that continues to grow. Like, it's certainly not at the point of fantasy sports. It's got a long way to go to get there, but I would love to see it get to that point. And it's, you know, it's by doing it on your own. It's by joining us here, and supporting the creator. And you know, maybe I'm out of turn here, but we've even discussed potentially doing something with our Patreons in 2025, where maybe our Patreons get to do a league with us, and that would be fun. Really cool. So consider joining our Patreon. There's tons of rewards for joining right now, but there's a little sneak peek of maybe a potential future reward that would be a lot of fun. So yeah, you got anything to add to all that?
No, you crushed it.
All right, cool. Well, thank you again, guys, and we will see you next week when we are inevitably streaming and or playing Flock.
That's right. Good night, everybody. Peace.
Bye, guys. Bye.